Toby, thanks so much for being here on the show. You're making a video game. You made a video game. I've been playing the video game. Is that what happened?
I can hardly believe it, but yes, that is the sequence of events.
And tell me, this game, Love Eternal. I have not yet completed it. There's some tricky jumps. It is a platformer that takes you to very effectively done cutscenes that are actually more stressful than the spikes and the frequent deaths. I have been deeply unsettled. I was playing the game with my partner, and she suddenly said, like, I have hairs on the back of my neck about what this dad's doing. And we're both big Twin Peaks fans and started talking amongst ourselves about the feelings we had that were similar there, particularly to Fire Walk with Me, the prequel movie about Laura Palmer, who is in deep, deep trouble with her family. Don't want to spoil it, but yeah, already a big old lead in. And here you are at Love Eternal, a game that is primed for big success, I think, but anything could happen. How are you feeling about it as it's about to release or did release today? Is it
It
today in two
is
days?
it's in 2 days, yes, on
Yeah.
Thursday. Yeah, it's surreal. I mean, I've worked on this game for 8 years, so like I feel completely neutral, you know? It's like I think once it comes out, I will um have a lot more feelings, but for the moment it's kind of too big to comprehend and it's sort of just looming menacingly and I'm occasionally turning around and glancing at it.
I didn't realize it was 8 years. That is a long time. That's not the only game you've worked on over those 8 years, I don't think, is it?
No, it's not. I mostly as a way of procrastinating on Love Eternal, I've ended up developing like, a couple dozen other games in the meantime. Be that small jam games or slightly larger ones I worked on with other friends, but Love Eternal is definitely the biggest, most polished release I've done.
Right, with a publisher and a team and contractors and whatnot. So it's definitely a different feeling. Can you tell us how you got started in game development? What are the games that influenced you to want to give it a try yourself?
I think the origin of that stuff was in high school for me when I got a laptop for the first time and I was Googling around trying to find free games because at the time a game being free was a novelty in of itself. So that led me to discover stuff like Cave Story, which was probably what kickstarted the whole idea for me that an individual could make a game. Like
Mm.
one person could make a really high quality release on that scale. And then the other games I remember having a big influence were a lot of early Matty Thorson platformers like Jumper or Flail or Money Seas, and also all of Niflas's games. So stuff like Within a Deep Forest, the Knit series, those had a really big impact on me, especially in terms of how they handled like atmosphere and how sort of quiet and restrained they were. Like they were kind of like the ambient music of games or something. So those would,
Yeah.
yeah, I would say that's like the trifecta of influences I drew the most from.
Cave Story, Maddie, and Niflis, who is one of those unsung, for folks who don't know, Niflis is a unsung solo developer who keeps cracking away at it. Every once in a while has something that comes close to a breakout. And if I remember correctly, Niflis collaborated with Pixel, who created Cave Story, on a game called Night Sky. Oh, you're like a marble. It's like 3DS only, maybe. It's a deep cut, so I apologize. Yeah, you can Google while I chat about it. But it truly, these are games that all three of the developers you named have had different levels of commercial success, but all of them are really adored by other game developers, and they all got their start, as far as I know, because they grew up with more like classic computer or NES games. But you're speaking from a generation that grew up wanting to be a solo indie game developer as opposed to wanting to like be a NES developer or a standard PC developer. Can you speak to what you think is different about your game in that it's taken influence from solo game developers as opposed to like, I don't know, AAA or classic NES games?
I definitely draw on a specific era of game development, kind of the first wave of indie stuff that was happening in Flash games, Flash game portals like, Newgrounds or Congregate, and stuff that was happening on Tig Squad, games like the original freeware Splunky or Cactus's games before Hotline Miami. Those games were very good at having a very condensed design, like very singular, kind of punchy, like one idea explored fully, iterated on in interesting ways, but like in a very sort of like concise, direct manner. And
Right.
I think an emphasis on 2D action. And I think that has to do some with like the tools that were available to make these games. I think a lot of people in that era were making stuff with like early versions of Game Maker or Construct, which lent themselves to these kind of like 2D arcadey action experiences. And it's been interesting now to see like the types of games that are easy to make with the most readily available tools have shifted into stuff like Unity horror games
Mm.
or or what's another good like puzzle script games or Bitsy games, these kind of like more narrative or puzzle focused things. So
Hmm.
it's been an interesting cultural shift, but I sort of align my work with a lot of stuff that was coming out in that like 2000s era of like 2D arcadey actiony gameplay.
Right. Except with a dad whose head just doesn't want to make you feel all right. It seems ready to trouble you deeply. And what I felt anyway, playing as far as into Love Eternal as I have so far, and I'm stuck on a part where you just need to basically float touching red crystals and not touch anything yet. And I'm playing with my 10-year-old who gets very bored if I die over and over again. And then I feel anxious like I failed him and not entertained him with video games because he sees video games as things to watch other people play for entertainment. He likes them more than like movies or TV shows, just watching someone play video games. So I failed him and I felt guilty. So I'm stuck at the moment, but I'm going to get back to it as soon as I can. But playing it, I felt like my guess about you was that you didn't see video games necessarily as needing to be mass market commercial products in order to be financially viable and or artistically viable. When you bring up Denoton with their early work before Hotline Miami, I talked to them right as Hotline Miami first came out. No one knew if it was going to be a hit. They had a box of wine. They're just chugging a box of wine and talking to me and being like, I don't know. We just slung it. We just slung it against the screen and there we were. And I'm like, first of all, I love their moxie and their genuine attitude towards life. And also, these aren't the kinds of people that made Mega Man and Mario, certainly. Or at least they weren't allowed, the people who made Mega Man and Mario weren't allowed to be like that. So when you play those games, when you played their games, those 2000, 2010-ish era, did you feel like there were any rules about what you were allowed to say or do? Or did it feel like an unbridled thing where you could truly let yourself go in any direction that you felt?
Certainly that era felt pretty creatively unrestrained, and I think part of that was especially that freeware era, a lot of it really was for, pardon the pun, the love of the game.
Mm,
There wasn't the commercial aspect, and I certainly don't think there's anything wrong with pursuing the commercial aspect. I'm doing it myself with this game, but it does change how you approach designing a game. Like you have to think a lot more about, you know, tempering the more idiosyncratic parts of your games so that a wider audience will be able to receive them. And I think that's always a tricky balancing act as a creator. Like you don't want to smooth every rough edge off, or the final product will kind of lack your own unique character.
mm,
But at the
mm-hmm.
same time, you do want to make it accessible to, the people who are willing to meet it where it's at. So
Right.
that it's an interesting balancing act you have to do as a creator.
Yeah, it's a stress that I can't really envy. I have it in my own way with the stuff that I create, but not making a whole game over 8 years. That is a challenge. And you work with a relatively small team, is my understanding, which can help with the financial risk. I don't think Hotline Miami would have been made if, and I know they had some friends help with the soundtrack, but it was mostly those two guys, Dennis and Jonathan, and if they failed, it's like, I guess we won't be able to pay rent for a little bit, but it wasn't like 50 or 100 people. So I think that a small team can help with those risks. I'm hoping so. Is that how it's felt for you? And can you tell us a little bit about the team you work with?
Yeah, I mean, I can't really speak too much to the financial viability of making an indie game in 2026 because, one, both me and my brother had day jobs for a lot of its development. Like, we were never banking on it as a source of income.
And your brother does artwork on the game?
Yes, my brother was the artist on the game, artist and animator. Um, I do think there's like periods of artistic freedom in subcultures, I think do track a lot to just like the cost of life,
Mm,
and like life expenditures. And in some ways, like we are, especially in America, kind of in a dire period for that. So I don't have like a larger point I'm making with this other than to underline that, but
yeah,
that's the only thing I really can say with confidence about like the financial aspect of making an indie game is it's like it's harder than ever to do that now, largely just because the cost of living is so high for most individuals that like being able to dedicate the leisure time um and to have the mental bandwidth to just like, pursue an art form, especially one that might take, years to come to fruition.
yeah,
Um, that puts people in a tricky spot.
yeah, absolutely. So congratulations in advance. No matter what happens next, you've done it, and it's a game that people are going to love if they play it, and getting people to play it is always the tricky part. My feelings again playing it just were kind of, I couldn't help but link it to Twin Peaks because I think about Twin Peaks all the time anyway. I don't know, should I try to show this to you? No, it's nailed to the wall. But have you seen Twin Peaks before? Do you know what I'm talking
Oh
about?
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Laura Palmer like does this with her hands. I
Yeah.
have those hands like nailed to my wall right now, and a print by David Lynch is over here, so deep in my brain. What I love about Twin Peaks is that it borrows from classic, sort of more wholesome or normal media like soap operas or FBI dramas, and then uses them to tell a story about the suburbs, which people think of as like a normal and safe average place, and say, oh, actually, no, underneath all of that, you think you know soap operas, you think you know FBI crime shows, you think you know the suburbs, but there's actually like a surreal awfulness everywhere that can get you at any time. And playing Love Eternal as far as I have, I was like, oh, the comforting feeling of Terry Kavanagh's Captain Verdian game, VVVVVVV, or a little bit of Celeste. Oh, I like Celeste by Maddie Thorson and friends. You get those strawberries and you avoid the spikes. It's stressful, but overall kind of light, even when it gets deeper into some feelings about depression and transition. It's still like a colorful platformer. And your game starts with some of those feelings a little bit, and then before I know it, my sibling is dancing on a car and levitating and turning into a smear. Not to spoil it. I hope I didn't spoil too much. Just enough to tease people and get them excited about what I'm talking about. But it gets into suburban family trouble almost right away. And then, from what I've gathered, gets deeper into just relationships with peers stress and who really matters to who, and can you be a subject of kind of terrifying actions of another person who may be dehumanizing you without having any sort of recourse. That's the feeling I'm getting already. Am I on the right track?
There's some threads there. Yeah.
So were you trying to give people a safe and comforting feeling with familiar gameplay, and then throw them off to say like there's deeper problems than you may even know if you continue to dig past like the platforming, which is like very well designed, thrilling, simple but direct, and tests your ability to trust your own instincts, which I really love. And then suddenly everything I thought I knew gets thrown on its head now and again. So, was that what you were intending with all of this?
I wouldn't say it was like that deliberate. I I knew I thought the platforming could complement the narrative sections, and I put a lot of time and attention into making sure the two seemed flowed seamlessly in and out of each other.
Mm.
And this is something I've talked about before, but I do think there was something potent about the degree of focus and fixation you have when you're trying to complete one of these platform challenges. The other aspects of the game, like the story and stuff, can slip away. And then when they are reintroduced, I think because you're sort of coming out of that trance-like state, they can be very like surprising and jarring and catch you off guard. Not like in a
Mm.
jump scare way, but just in sort of an element reemerging that you had forgotten about. And I think that can be a little disarming and make whatever scene plays out more psychologically effective for the player.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a sense that you adjust to the rules, and then the game seamlessly turns into something with different rules or no rules all of a sudden. Even after you spend all this time mastering the physics rules and getting a sense of jump height and all that stuff, then things suddenly get turned upside down, literally at times. So, why did you think it was that you had this urge to make a game and stick with it for that long that is kind of inherently about turning the tables on people?
I think I guess it to the point of like why I felt compelled to work on this game for so long. A lot of it was just faith in the sort of core idea of it. I I'd modeled it off a previous game I'd made called Love, which was prohibitively difficult for most people, but I did get the experience of watching people play it that there was something they were really fixating on and was something that was really compelling to them. So I felt like I had a sense of confidence that the skeleton or scaffolding I was building this narrative component on top of was sturdy enough to keep players' attention in a way that would allow me to be more experimental or weird or ambitious with the story. And to the point of the story too, I also think I have a general confidence that people actually want stranger and weirder stories in their media than maybe they realize or that they even know how to articulate that they want. But
Mm.
when they get it, I think they often find it interesting and compelling.
Yeah, absolutely. Did you want to scare and unsettle people with the game?
Yeah, I think that was my intent. It's it's not the sole intent. I think there's parts of the game that are, also funny. Um, I think there's parts of the game that are, emotional, but I did definitely want to consciously work in the horror genre.
Mm, yeah. And 2D platforming horror is there's a space for it. I'm thinking there's a game, I think it's a Brazilian made game called Tamanchi that's really unsettling, but it's like broken unsettling. I don't know if you've played it. It's largely black and white, and I might be getting the name wrong. I haven't thought about it in 5 years or so, but it's my point is it's sort of a rarity in the genre. So you're standing out, which is exciting in that way. But I think one of the questions people are going to have is why is it called Love Eternal? You gave us a little hint because it's based on a prior game called Love, but it's not. You don't feel loved. Like I felt loved by you as a craftsperson who like really put a lot of thought into the fusion of the story and the level design and the way things cut away. Like, it's very, very well done. And also, I feel like Maya, the main character, is totally alone, not sure what's real and what's not, and not feeling very loved in general. The people, even when things are normal with the family, it's cold and scary. So I'm wondering, love, is there, and I want to also not spoil too much, but am I going to feel loved in this game ever? Or am I just totally screwed?
I'll defer a little bit because I do think there is stuff later in the game that I think hints or explains that more. I
Sure.
I guess what I'll say here is that I think the game offers multiple interpretations for the title. I think some of which are more sincere and some of which are more sardonic. So
Mm, mm-hmm.
um, it'll be interesting to see, once people play through the entire game, what their read on that is. That's something I'm personally curious about because I have my own
Yeah,
interpretations, but it'll be exciting to see what other people come up with.
sure. Did you have like a conscious meaning behind most of the things you put into the game, or did you find yourself sometimes just feeling like I want to put this in and I don't even know why and I don't know what it means? Was it a mix of those elements, or was it all deliberate, or all sort of stream of consciousness?
I would say it, not 100% one or the other, but definitely leaning more in the direction of just putting things in that in made intuitive sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
I think I had a strong sense of the emotional logic running through the game, and I tried to make sure everything confirmed to that more than I was concerned with stuff, fitting together perfectly logically or logistically,
Right.
because I think that's, the more interesting way of engaging with the story and more how we as humans like tend to engage with narrative is not this kind of like, you know, wikiified understanding of a story where it's like, okay, let's break it down into its constituent parts and, um, you know, tease out any logical fallacies. Um, and I'm also not, I really resist sort of a method of storytelling where you have some explicit meaning you're trying to convey and you hide it via subtext, but the careful viewer can, tease apart all the little hints you've left and decipher the true meaning of the game, and then they can kind of um, make a very comprehensive Reddit post and file it away as done in their brain. Like I don't
Mm-hmm.
think that's never satisfying for me. I'm not. It's I guess some people derive satisfaction from that, but that's never really been my intent. I always wanted to, you know, tell a story where stuff was open ended. There were loose ends that never get tied up, and in general, just there was stuff about it that would make it lodge in your brain even after you'd finished it and continue thinking about it because there are these areas of uncertainty even after you've finished the game.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And the fact that I'm asking myself, will I feel loved in this game? And what does love even mean? Like, why is it in the title of this game? What is love? Is it attachment? Is it connection? Is it bouncing around inside of somebody else's head with them and caring about them? Or do you not even have to care, at least for some people? And oh, the my I'm playing again with my 10-year-old, and he's like, "Who's the villain? Who's the last boss? Is it the dad? Is it the sibling? Is it that blonde girl that I got a hint of in the trailer?" And I'm like, last boss logic is I'm not sure if that's going to come in, but it might, because it is very, your game definitely like loves video games. It's clearly wants to be a video game and is reveling in the kind of internal logic of games, here and there, but also not kind of beholden to them at the same time. But that the blonde girl, can we talk about her a little bit? There's a too spoilery. She's in the trailer, and the trailer leads you to think that she may almost be the designer of the experience you're in, which then made me wonder, is this a a Toby self insert. But she will only look at you from the corner of her eyes in the trailer, and that's body language wise someone who is keeping an eye on you but maybe not connecting with you in the same way. So yeah, what are you willing to hint at for people who haven't played the game about who this potentially central ish character is in Maya's troubling adventures?
I mean, I'll say that's I'll applaud your keen observational skills. But I'll say that the sort of things hinted at in the trailer are um probably all I'm willing to reveal there for at the risk of spoiling people discovering those things out for themselves.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it does feel like the impact of discovering it for yourself is a big part of what you want to people to experience. In order to communicate your ideas, they need to have a self discovering or I'm sorry, a moment of discovering it for themselves, which might lead to self discovery. You can always hope, without it just being information that they read, like you said, on a Reddit post or something. That's not how you express yourself, through just creating lore that you can read later. But that brings me back to, how do you even like market and tell people about a game like this when the surprises are such a big part of it? How do you explain to people that they're going to maybe get something out of it without telling them what's in there?
I think that's been one of the trickiest parts of um selling and describing the game. You know, I have like my sort of like slaw of Steam genre tags that I can toss around, like, you know, precision platformer, psychological horror, and I can, you know, hint at some of the influences of the game, like, you know, Twin Peaks, as you mentioned, Lynchian stuff. You know, try to point towards the fact that this is horror, but you know, it's a certain flavor of horror. It's like more about unease than like jump scare.
Mm.
But it has been tricky. You know, I think there's also like the question of like, how do you represent your game, you know, that's sort of predicated on withholding information to a wider audience. And, you know, honestly, part of the answer might be like you lie a little, like, because it, you know, it's, if your game is trying to subvert the player's expectations, it's fine to set those expectations going in, as long as, you know, you've set it up so they're not going to be too disappointed, or
Mm.
maybe they'll even enjoy it when it, you know, turns out to be more than they originally anticipated. In some ways, maybe there's also a little bit of misleading the audience. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I suspect, you know, a good number of people will go into it assuming, you know, from the first 20 minutes that they can predict kind of how the rest of the game will play out, in terms of just
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, you know, it'll sort of keep ping-ponging between these narrative beats and these difficult platforming challenges, and that'll sort of just repeat until like a satisfying climax.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, I think there's more going on to it than that, that I um can't really speak too much on without like ruining it for people who haven't played it yet.
Well, I love that you're willing to say at least that much. I see all the time. Like, I don't know. Have you played Frog Fractions by Twinbeard? Do you remember that Frog Fractions?
I only ever heard about it in passing. I know
Yeah,
there's a subversive angle to it, but I haven't
yeah.
played it myself.
It starts off with a game about a frog eating flies, if I remember correctly, in order to make math equations, but none of the math equations work. And then suddenly you like eventually press down and go into the swamp and then ride a dragon, and it turns into a courtroom drama. And I think there's a shoot 'em up. Like, it just turns into every game, and it was free, so people weren't disappointed that they bought like an edutainment game for their kid that turned into a courtroom drama. But it was the subverting of expectations that was the point and part of what delighted people in it. But until people heard it subverted expectations from someone, then they never even tried it. And I think it's really important to at least let people know they may be in for a surprise at some point, in order to give them a shot, because people are hungrier for surprises more than ever. We all have access to anything we want to look up So if we are the ones driving what information goes into our brain, if we only get information we're seeking, we're never going to be surprised again. And I keep talking about him. He's in the other room trying to entertain himself, waiting for me to come out and entertain him some more. My 10-year-old is like, what am I supposed to do with my time? I'm like, literally anything you want. He's like, I don't know what I want. I know I'll just Google boring YouTubers if you're not here. So what do I even do with my own brain? I'm like, find a surprise. He's like, where are surprises? Under a rock. It's cold outside. I don't want to look. So you've given people the opportunity to have a really finely made precision platformer that will test your ability to, even if you've played other games in the genre, really swallow something that tweaks things enough that it feels a different sort of inviting and a different sort of hostile than some of the games that I think might have influenced you at the same time, while also not knowing what else to expect moving forward. And you've been so deliberate in exactly what you do and don't say. And I've really been feeling like grateful that you didn't go on a huge backstory explaining exactly who Maya is, the main character, and what's going on there. Just kind of sitting you there as though you were invited to meet this family as it begins and just try to get to know them as you can, not knowing who to trust and who to even like or dislike at first, really leaving you to have to be the one to do that work, which has been really, really a lot of fun so far.
Cool. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, I always get at this point with especially a newer developer who is, well, you've been developing for a while, but in the commercial space anyway, who's wondering like, did I make a good game? Is anyone gonna like it? Like it's a really hard space to sit in. Similar to how you feel in the game, like wondering what's gonna happen next for you as you're playing it. Now you're kind of having to sit in that spot, wondering what's gonna happen as it gets out in the world and people discover it for themselves. What do you think the best case scenario for you would be? What are your highest expectations while being realistic for yourself about what'll happen next as the game is coming out in 2 days?
I honestly haven't put too much thought into it. Like I obviously want people to play it. You know, more people rather than fewer people would be ideal because I put a lot of time and effort into it, as did everyone else on the team. But, I don't really have um I feel like the thing I wanted to accomplish with the game was the making of it. And
Mm-hmm.
obviously I made it with the intent that people would play it, but I think that will happen. Like some people are going to play it and some percentage of those people are going to, I think, really resonate with it. And
Mm-hmm.
as long as that happens, I'll be happy.
Yeah, yeah, I'm excited for that for you. I'm thinking about the business side of it probably more than you are, so just forgive me. But just for purposes of conversation, I'm thinking about Crow Country, which was a retro horror style game led by two brothers, the Super Flash Brothers, I believe they're called, SFB. A pretty small team, and they had like publisher and marketing and stuff. But the people who actually made it, I think it was 3 or 4 people, including music and voice actors. And people didn't know what to expect, and then they took a chance on it and discovered like, wow, this made me feel a lot more than I guessed, given its like retro trappings and from a developer who maybe wasn't a household name like a Edmund McMillan or a Matty Thorson or whatnot. And I'm hoping to see similar sort of fan art of Maya and the troubling dad. Also thinking of Lisa. Have you played that Lisa, the painful RPG?
I
Sorry,
haven't.
I'm
I
just
know of it, but I haven't played it.
Man, I did not. We helped promote that game. I backed the Kickstarter, and I'm like a guest character in it. And I'm like, good luck, Austin. The person who made his name's Austin. Now it's like the amount of people who have bought and played that game, I never would have guessed. It's definitely in the millions at this point, and it's a completely unapproachable turn-based RPG about like cannibalism and like feeding your arm to people sometimes in your party, and every permadeath and horrors, just the worst vibes. It's such a feel bad game, and yet it found its people, and I'm really hoping your game does too. Is there like a worst case scenario? Is there like a nightmare scenario that you? I don't know if you'd want to share it, but I can't help but be curious if there's anything you're deeply worried will happen next.
Not really. I mean, I think I have the fears every developer has, before their game comes out, which is like there's a massive game breaking bug they didn't catch, and then they have
Oh,
to like, have to
yeah.
spend a week scrambling to find it, and in that time everyone will have like review bombed it on Steam or whatever.
Oh,
But
yeah.
realistically, I don't think that's going to happen. Like I think one thing I'm happy I chose about my first large commercial release is it's extremely linear. Like,
Mm,
it's basically a straight line from A to B, which makes testing it a lot easier. There aren't that many variables, left uncovered in the game. And at this point, enough people have like sat down and played through the whole thing and been like, "Yep, worked for me." That I'm feeling pretty confident about the wider release.
that's awesome. Would you want to see like fan art and fan interpretations and like merch? Do you want to make T-shirts and hats?
I haven't thought about the merch angle. I would love to see fan art. That would make my day.
Yeah, yeah. I bet it'll happen. Is there something you could tell us about Maya, who remains mysterious, that might lead players to know more about if they will identify with her as a character? Is there anything to describe her, as she must mean a lot to you? Anything that might clue people in a little bit about her? And it doesn't necessarily need to be about the game. If there's anything about yourself that influenced her writing and creation, anything about the game at all that might be parallel to your life, that too would be something I'm sure people would be interested in.
Yeah, you draw on your own life experiences when you're writing characters for every character, I think to some extent. For Maya specifically, I think I drew a lot on feelings I could remember having in childhood of just sort of being frustrated over um, how much my life lacked autonomy, which
Mm,
isn't specific to me, but I think the experience most kids have growing up. Some of them are just more bothered by it than others, and I remember um, being frustrated by that. So I think I channeled some of that in myself when I was trying to write Maya, but you know, she's definitely not like a stand-in for me, and in the same way, none of the characters are. Um,
sure. Yeah,
no,
that makes a lot of sense. And one of the things I'm again most interested in is you establish early on that she's in her home and that maybe is where the conflict is. But I got so excited when I first left the house and found out like I'm going to be able to find out how this person interacts with people outside of her family and wonder, is that where the true problem is? Like as a kid I too wondered, like, why am I so frustrated? Is it because my family sucks? Is it their fault? Or is it the whole world? Or is it somebody else out there? Like, who's the real driver of my discontent? And I've so much curiosity about that for what I'm going to find out about who's really driving the problems that Maya's having and what I don't, that's not the right word for it, but she doesn't know if she's sane or not at this point. Like the amount of trouble she's in from the start is really intense for video game standards. I think people might be like, oh well, she's not kidnapped and she's not surrounded by zombies or something. So, but again, it has that Lynchian normal noir suburbs. Like it takes the suburbs and shows their darkness right from the start. That I feel deeply worried about her. So you did it.
thank you. Um, I'm glad to hear that.
Anything else that we didn't touch upon that you wanted to talk about that you want people to know about yourself, about Love Eternal, about anything at all?
I don't think so. I'm really excited to see how people react to it. I'm looking forward to watching streams of the game. I'm I'll be curious what sort of interpretations people come up with for the story. I'll be curious if the sort of emotional heft of the story connects with other people the same way it does for me. So
Mm,
I think in general the I'm just kind of looking forward to seeing the world's reaction to it. And I
yeah.
hope anyone who picks it up, gets something out of it because I had a lot of fun making it. It was, one of the I'm really proud of it. I think I have a lot of confidence in it, and hopefully that's, validated when it reaches the wider world.
Yeah, I have been in this position talking to developers on the cusp of release before. So not to sound too old and know-it-all-y, but I am already confident that it may not happen next week or even next year, but there's going to be deep think pieces. There's going to be people who say this game got me in ways that no other game did because it's so clearly authentic and made without a deep profit motive, without an urge to kind of follow in anyone's particular's footsteps other than kind of your own instincts, and that's clear from like the very first beat. So it's wonderful to see that. I remember I didn't read a deep Earthbound think piece until like 2008 or something. It was Tim Rogers. I don't know if you know who he is. He suddenly just wrote about how Earthbound is one of the deepest pieces of American fiction about America ever made. And nobody said that when that came out. When I was a kid in 1994, everyone was like, kind of crappy graphics RPG. I should play Chrono Trigger. But it eventually found its people. And
Yeah,
I'm sure Love Eternal, it may happen the first week. I hope so. But however long it takes, I'm confident it's going to find its people too.
thank you.
I kind of like it. You've got that curly, curly hair.